Halo Spartan Assault is an obscure game. Originally published for Windows 8 and the Windows Phone, it's honestly kind of amazing that the game is still playable at all. Games published on dead platforms usually turn into lost media. But remarkably, Spartan Assault got not one, but two console releases coming out during that small window where games launched on both the 360 and the Xbox One, which makes Halo Spartan Assault the first Halo game to come out on the Xbox One. That's quite a title to claim, and maybe not one that Spartan Assault would like to claim considering what the game actually is. A heavily monetized, brand tie-in mobile game developed to incentivize buying a phone nobody actually wanted. I bet you thought I wouldn't bother with this one. You should know me better by now. Unless this is your first video of mine, in which case... bold choice. Halo Spartan Assault is like a time capsule of an entire genre of games that have mostly disappeared, up there with the classics like Mass Effect Infiltrator or Assassin's Creed Pirates or Borderlands Legends. 2010 to 2015 was a time when phones started to get enough processing power to be on par with handheld consoles, and so pretty much every studio rushed to get a phone game out to cash in on a noteworthy brand. These games all follow a similar template. They were all made cheap and dirty, usually outsourced to a smaller development studio. They were met with middling to negative reviews, let's charitably call them mixed, shall we? They had some quite pushy and aggressive microtransactions, and they all died like 1 or 2 years after launch. None of the games I just listed are actually available anymore. They're all considered lost media. Spartan Assault is still around, the last game standing, and that's because Spartan Assault is unique. Not in terms of its gameplay, certainly not that, but because of the situation around its creation. Spartan Assault was originally developed for the Windows Phone, and the whole gimmick of the Windows Phone was that it ran Windows, the same operating system that basically every PC uses. That meant that by default, every app and game that was developed for the Windows Phone could pretty easily be ported to a PC, and so unlike all of these other phone games, Spartan Assault was available to play on PCs. I could be talking out my ass here, but I think one of the main reasons that all of these games failed was a complete misunderstanding of what the mobile game market actually wants. They assumed that because Assassin's Creed is a big and noteworthy brand on consoles, that would automatically translate to success on phones. But what we know now is that phone gamers and console gamers are not the same group. In fact, most phone gamers wouldn't even call themselves gamers. Your average phone gamer is like Sharon. She's in her mid-40s and she doesn't consider herself a gamer. She doesn't know what a Halo is. She doesn't know the difference between a PlayStation 5 and a GameCube, but she's got 6,000 hours logged in Gardenscapes. Sharon does not care that your new Mass Effect game has tie-in rewards in Mass Effect 3. Sharon doesn't know what a Mass Effect is. Sharon is just looking for a thing to do while she's on the train to work or is on the couch watching her soaps. There is a lot more crossover between console gamers and PC gamers. I don't have the stats on this per se, but I have to imagine that before it came to Xbox, the majority of people who played this game played it on a PC. One of the most requested features on launch was controller support, a feature that doesn't really make sense if you're playing on a mobile, but it does make sense if you're playing on a PC. That's most likely why the game got a console release. They realised that the majority of people who want to play Halo want to play it on an Xbox. A revelation that more of these companies probably should have had. That comes with its own set of problems though, because to its core, Spartan Assault is a fun game. It's a game designed for Sharon, and that just makes the entire project a huge, muddled mess. Now you might say, Kyle, it's just a phone game, you can't be that harsh to it. To which I have two responses. One, they thought it was good enough to release on consoles, so I'm well within my rights to judge it as a console release. And secondly, why have we all just decided that it's okay for phone games to be bad? They don't get a pass just because the developers know that nobody's going to play them. Nobody plays them because they've got a reputation for being shite. Spartan Assault may be the last game standing, but that by no means makes it the best.
Greetings, Spartan. I'm Roland, UNSC Infinity's AI. We're going to study the historical battles in hopes of increasing your tactical skills for the future. As a bonus, it's a pretty fun game you can play in your spare time.
Halo Spartan Assault is contextualized as a training simulation for the Spartans on board the Infinity, a meta layer that adds very little to the whole experience and is honestly just kind of confusing, since what we can charitably call the story of Spartan Assault is about a battle over a planet called Dreyfus 5. The game is split into 5 operations, with 1 bonus added as DLC, and each operation contains 5 chapters. During these chapters, you take on the role of either Spartan Palmer from Halo 4 or this yellow boy, Spartan Davis, and their battles across Dreyfus 5 and its moon. Mechanically, Palmer and Davis are identical and neither speak during missions, so the multiple perspectives thing is kind of pointless, which, to be fair, is in keeping with the entire story, which as far as the game is concerned is kind of pointless itself. The story is just the loosest of frameworks to string each level of the game together. The only storytelling in the game is a 20-second cutscene at the start of each operation, a text description of each chapter that you're about to do, and a quote from one of the soldiers during the load screen for flavour. If you actually try and pay attention to what's going on in the story, you're playing the game wrong, because what you get is pretty much exactly the same plot as Halo 4 Spartan Alps with the addition of a Death Star. I'm quite serious, it turns out that the moon is actually an ancient Forerunner planet-destroying device and it fires a big green laser into the planet and it starts to blow up. They could have at least changed the colour of the big laser. I realise I've gone pretty far without actually explaining what Spartan Assault is, but the issue is that what it is pretty much exactly what it looks like and nothing more. It's a twin-stick shooter. I'm not much of a twin-stick aficionado myself, but even I can tell that Spartan Assault is extremely generic as far as twin-stick shooters go. One stick controls movement, one stick controls your aim, and you shoot a big stream of bullets until the bad guy falls down. The game captures the look and especially the sound of Halo well enough, but in terms of mechanics, there is nothing about the experience that is distinct to the rhythms Halo has established. Yes, you have a rechargeable shield and a selection of the same weapons from the games, but the weapons don't have nearly the same level of mechanical distinction as they do in the games. Instead, it's more like the weapons have been chosen from across the series to fill the roles you need in a twin-stick shooter. We need a regular machine gun, get the assault rifle. We need a more accurate, high-damage pinpoint one, that's the pistol. We need one that's like a big laser. Every twin stick has a big laser, right? Let's just use the focus rifle from Halo Reach, that's a big laser. There's no sense of finding the right weapons for the right situations, or of saving the power weapons for the big moments. In fact, you'll never find power weapons on the missions, and we'll get to the reason for that later. The only significance to different weapons is which one has the best numbers, which is almost always going to be the focused rifle since it's a death beam of destruction, just like any twin-stick shooter with a beam weapon. The game has no adjustable difficulty either. You can add some skill modifiers to the mission for an extra challenge, but the balance of enemies will always be roughly the same, and as a result the game is kind of extremely easy, with just a few exceptions where things massively spike in difficulty. The game will occasionally break things up with a vehicle segment, which is probably where the game feels most Halo-like. The controls leave a lot to be desired, but the vehicles themselves behave pretty consistently to the way they work in the main games. The vehicle segments are few and far between though, usually only one per operation. Most of what you're doing is still very generic twin-stick shooting. When the game was ported to Xbox, they added an additional co-op game mode, fighting against the Flood for the first time since Halo 3. Critics at the time often praised the co-op as one of the best features, but I'm going to temper expectations on that one. When I managed to con my friend Nathan into playing through it with me, we had what I would describe as an adequate amount of fun. We played through all 5 co-op missions, it took us just under an hour, and after that curiosity was satiated, there was no chance in hell I was going to be able to convince him to go for the gold medals. We had fun because co-op with a friend is just kind of inherently fun. We chatted, we made jokes, and we played the game in the background of the general activity of just hanging out. The game doesn't do anything especially unique with its co-op features. There's some classic additions you'd expect in a game like this, like holding open doors for each other or special enemies that leech onto you and need to be shot by your partner. But it's still very generic. Of course, that genericness is kind of a necessity because the gimmick of Spartan Assault is that it's a twin-stick shooter that was designed to be played without the sticks. As a phone game, the entire thing would be controlled with touchscreen controls in a way that I can't possibly test or show you anymore, but reviews at the time were not exactly raving about how good the controls were. Besides, when you're the first and biggest twin-stick shooter in the Windows phone, you don't really need to be unique, you just need to be. What else are people going to play? That's one issue with porting the game to consoles. Suddenly it's competing in a market that's well established and where games in the genre need to have a unique selling point in order to be noteworthy. The other, bigger issue is that Spartan Assault is designed for a mobile game rhythm of play, by which I mean it's designed to be played in short bursts. Console games are generally designed with a longer play session in mind. Big single-player games and RPGs are generally designed with the idea that you're going to sit down and play for several hours at a time. Online multiplayer games can vary, but a typical FPS is balanced to last around 10 to 15 15 minutes. Going longer depending on game mods and the amount of players and the like. Phone games are designed to be played in sessions between 2 and 5 minutes, for pulling out while you're on the bus or other more private places. The most popular phone games are built with this in mind, either passive games which just require you to check in every now and then, or with levels that can be finished in a few minutes, like Candy Crush. Spartan Assault follows this model. Each chapter is only at maximum about 6 minutes long. They are very quick to get through, which is fine if you're playing on the go, in theory anyway, but really doesn't work when you're sitting down to play a console game. One of the biggest draws of a shooter, especially a twin-stick shooter, is getting in the zone, finding your rhythm and entering that kind of hyper-focus mode where you're keenly aware of everything happening in the game and following it like a dance. Spartan Assault's missions are too short to actually enter the zone that way because just as you might be getting into it, the levels are already over. And then you just have to spend time faffing on the menus, and by the time you're playing again, you need to start the process all over. But at the same time, I also don't think this would be any better if I was playing on a phone. Even if the levels are too short, they're too involved for Sharon to have a good time with. I play phone games, but typically speaking, the phone games I play are not nearly this involved. Even if it's short, the game does require your full attention in a way that casual games don't. The most common phone games I play are like Boggle and Sudoku, things which you can A, play with one hand, and B, require very little brain power. Not only is it just one hand, but it's really only one action. Spartan Assault requires 2 hands and your full attention. It's not simple enough to quickly pull it on the bus because it's going to take too much of your attention and you're going to miss your stop. So what we end up with is the worst of both worlds. It's too long and complex to be a good phone game, and it's too short and simple to be a good console game. But please, don't let that stop you spending lots of money on it. I found an old Puff Piece blog about the game with a quote that I absolutely think is one for the ages. While Halo Spartan Assault is a single-player game, there will be weekly challenges to keep the content new and fresh. Then there's the in-app purchase system that will encourage you to upgrade your weapons or armor to take the battle to the next level. That is such a clever little dance around how terrible the microtransaction system in this game was. I say was because it was so bad that they actually removed it entirely about a year after launch, leaving just this scummy shell in its place. That quote makes it sound like the game has some kind of upgrade system for your weapons, right? Incorrect! Here's how it works. At the start of each level, you can set up your loadout. You begin with a default roster of weapons that you can upgrade. I did quote marks with my hands, but you can't see that, I guess. You can upgrade your weapons by spending XP on better weapons or armor abilities or boosters. You gain XP at a very slow rate. At the end of my run through the campaign, I had gained about 5,000 XP. And these upgrades cost around 1,000 XP each. Up to 2,000 if you want to bring a rocket launcher. So you can blow an entire campaign's worth of XP on a single screen if you wanted to. Or you could get these at a much lower investment with credits, which are of course the real world money equivalent. Here's the twist. These upgrades are one-time use items. They're only active for the single mission you purchase them on. So, you get to spend real-world money to enjoy the rocket launcher, which has limited ammo and you'll never find more on the map, for a whole 6 minutes until that mission is over. You want to replay that mission again? You gotta buy another rocket launcher, friend. It's just one of the dumbest microtransaction systems I've ever seen, to the point where I almost feel like it was a trick. There's nothing on the screen that makes it clear that these are one-time use purchases. I feel like the intention was to have some poor sap put some money into the game to unlock these upgrades, only for the anvil to fall and the door to spring open and for the devs to shout, "Ha! Got you, loser!" The truth is that Spartan Assault isn't a game to play. It's a game to grind. And these microtransactions are preying on a very specific kind of player. Me. Playing through the campaign of Spartan Assault will not take you very long at all. If we're being really generous, I'll say it might take you 4 hours. I did it in 2.5, but not everyone's a pro gamer like me. That is not a long game by any means, and finishing the campaign is where most people will probably drop off the game, if they even make it that far. These microtransactions are not for those players. These microtransactions are there specifically to prey on completionists. Spartan Assault has several completionist achievements, all of which are a massive grind, meaning they're quite boring and take a long time. At the end of each level, you're given a score and a medal based on your performance. So, of course, there's an achievement for completing every level with a gold medal. I should point out that Windows Phone games having achievements was a selling point mentioned a lot. That Puff blog thing from before also mentions that the game will have achievements, although they claim it will have 40, which shipped with 20, so I have no idea what's going on with this blog. It's on the official Microsoft Blogs website, but all of the images are broken and it has no credited author or date or anything. Other posts on this website have credited authors, and I'm realising this probably isn't a very academic source. Oh, maybe he's counting both the release on Windows and on the Windows Phone. 20 plus 20 equals 40. Yeah, buy the game twice, why don't you? Anyway, you're given a medal at the end of each level, but the twist on that is that the factors that actually lead to a good score are kind of weird. It's not about doing well in a traditional sense, it's mostly about racking up multi-kills and bonuses. Playing carefully and cautiously will not even net you a medal. You need to be quick, and specifically you need to kill lots of things in a row quickly. That's quite tedious to do with the weapons they provide you. But you could go in with a rocket launcher, couldn't you? That'd make those multi-kills way easier. It's a rocket launcher. Multi-kills is what it's for. And while you're at it, why not also buy a score multiplier bonus, so even if you can't play perfectly, this little baby will more than make up for it. The game had a leaderboard system for these scores, and a leaderboard combined with a score multiplier is pretty much the definition of a pay-to-win scheme. But even without this, the objective is clear. These microtransactions exist not to add fun to the game, but to reduce boredom. This kind of monetized convenience is extremely common for phone games. It's pretty much a design standard. Frankly, I think a lot of phone games are designed backwards from the idea that people will pay to reduce tedium. Arbitrary timers or energy or whatever that you can pay to skip. The difference is that most of those games are free, at least the base game. Spartan Assault was a paid-for game with its inconvenient system on top of it, which really rubbed people the wrong way. I think there's also some more audience misunderstanding here. Sharon is pretty unlikely to log into Twitter and blast your accounts with hate mail over aggressive monetization like this. Capital G gamers can and will do that often. So, the monetization was removed, but the system is still in place. The game is still a massive grindy time sink if you're trying to complete it. It's just that now you can't pay a premium to make it go faster. Like most phone games, the game wasn't really the point to begin with. The microtransactions were the point, and with them gone, you're just left with a skeleton of a game designed to make you want to spend money on it. I'm not inherently against the idea of a twin-stick Halo game, and at the very least I think Spartan Assault looks the part. The game has a very clean look to it. It's obviously designed to be optimised for phones, but the big shapes and bold colours are quite pleasing and readable. There's some clever tricks employed with the 3D elements to give the environment a lot of depth, with details far in the background off the sides of cliffs and the like. At its best, the game kind of looks like playing Halo Wars locked into a single perspective. The game actually borrows quite a bit from Halo Wars, with a lot of vehicles from that game like the Wolverines and Grizzly tanks making an appearance. And like Halo Wars, clearly a lot of care went into translating the visual language of Halo. Elites move in the same way, grunts cower in the same way they do in the FPS games when you throw a grenade. All the weapons and vehicles sound right, and I actually genuinely like the soundtrack. I think it does a much better job than Halo 4 at capturing a classically Halo feel. The cutscenes are probably the worst looking visual in the game. They're rendered in the same style as Halo 4's terminals, which means they have this really weird clay-like quality to them where faces move in kind of uncanny ways. Considering how short and insignificant they are, it doesn't really matter, but the style is a bit jarring. The weirdest thing, which you've definitely noticed by now if you're watching the video, is that the corners of the screen are cropped out. I think this is so the game looks consistent across the many different sizes and shapes of screens that the game could have been played on. Black bars are less noticeable if the entire game is designed to look like a little window. It's not too distracting, but it is at the very least a little bit distracting. The visuals of the game at least show that some effort was put into the game. It's not a total cash grab, even if that's what it feels like a lot of the time while playing it. And clearly, it was successful enough, because 2 years later it got a sequel.
Greetings, Spartan. I'm Roland, the UNSC Infinity's AI. The Office of Naval Intelligence has cleared you to access a highly classified combat simulation. It's based on events that took place during the Battle of New Mombasa in 2552.
I said in my Halo 4 video that Spartan Ops was destined to be one of the most obscure campaign experiences in the franchise, and I specified one of because Halo Spartan Strike is the most obscure campaign in the franchise. Unlike Spartan Assault, Spartan Strike has never gotten a console release, making it the only Halo game in the franchise that you can't play on Xbox. I'm not sure why exactly. The game does have controller support, and as far as I can tell, it's built on the exact same engine as Spartan Assault. I don't claim to be an expert, but a console release doesn't seem impossible. But given that, as far as I can tell, Vanguard Games, the company that made these games, doesn't exist anymore, that might be an indicator as to why not. With the Windows Phone being discontinued and the game being pulled from iOS stores, Spartan Strike is now only available on the PC. I wouldn't be shocked to learn that a large portion of Halo fans don't even know that this game exists. The game's release was thoroughly overshadowed by the marketing campaign for Halo 5, and it's remained relatively obscure ever since. The game has just over 11,000 registered players on True Achievements, but compare that to Spartan Assault's 187,000 and you can see the substantial difference between the two. It's kind of a shame, because by all metrics, Spartan Strike is a better game. It's still a very generic twin-stick shooter, but there's a whole bunch of small tweaks and quality of life improvements made to the game that make it just slightly better and more refined. Things like adding some directional indicators to show which direction you're shooting and facing to add clarity, or removing the turret overheating mechanic, which never made sense for the game. Each level now has a mission handler who isn't much of a character at all, but at least she makes it clear what you're supposed to be doing. And just in general, each mission is slightly longer to allow for more in-the-zone moments to occur. Most importantly, the game shipped without any microtransactions. The loadout system is still in the game, completely identical to how it was in Spartan Assault, but the microcurrency CR has been removed and XP has been renamed CR, but you earn it at a much faster rate, 500 for a gold medal instead of 200 that Assault gives you. The medals have also been made much more attainable. I got golds on most of the levels without even really trying. So even if the skeleton is still there, things have been rebalanced to be much less of a grind. It actually feels like a game intended to be played this time. Story-wise, there's still not much. In fact, there might be even less. Your Spartan this time is this unnamed orange guy, and the plot revolves around a Forerunner device called the Conduit, which can open portals, and you've got to stop the Covenant from using it to open lots of portals for the Prometheans, who show up as a second faction of enemies in this game, which is a nice enough addition. The main difference is the game's colour palette. Spartan Assault mostly took place on a barren moon and a desert planet. Strike switches to a more classic Halo palette of greens and silvers and some cities on Earth and another Halo ring. At the end of the day, these are all minor improvements. I wish I could tell you that Spartan Strike is a hidden masterpiece, but it's really not. It's fine. But it's not a game I could really recommend playing without knowing that you're already a massive Halo fan and want to complete the whole set. It's why I can't really justify giving it its own separate video. The video would be 5 minutes long because the gameplay is identical to Spartan Assault aside from these minor tweaks. And because the game is so obscure, it's very difficult to find any details on the game's development. It's the most basic kind of sequel you can get. More of the same, but just a little bit better. At the very least, I think the existence of Spartan Strike proves that Spartan Assault wasn't just a cash grab. It seems as though when making this game, they took the criticisms of Assault to heart and tried to at least make a better game with the tools that were available to them. And even if I don't think the end result is a hidden gem, it's a game people made and people worked on, and I respect that at least. The Halo Spartan games, by all accounts, should no longer exist. Not because they're bad, but because games like this are almost always doomed to be lost forever. And for how mean I've been to these games, I am glad that they're still around. The phone rush of the 2010s, as I guess I'll call it, was pretty comfortably a massive failure, and I think Spartan Assault served as a perfect example of why. Slapping a recognisable name on a generic template and using it to annoy people into spending money just isn't a very charming way to break into a new market, and I think by now most of these companies have realised that. Halo Spartan Assault is an obscure game, and at the end of the day, I think that's just exactly where it belongs. Obscure, but not forgotten.
Well done, Spartan. Achieve top rank for all our simulations to stay at peak combat readiness.
Thank you for watching, and a very special thank you to my wonderful patrons for your continued support. If you'd like to see your name up here, or just support the things I do, or stay at peak combat readiness, then please consider signing up. It would mean a lot to me. As well as a like, comment, a share, and a subscribe. We're really piling on all the Halo games now, so you can find all of those in this playlist up here, or for something a little bit different, why not check out my podcast Enter the Snyderverse, where we just covered The Batman. Not a Snyderverse movie, I know, but it came out during that time. We just wanted to talk about it, okay?